the Gospel of John has information that is earlier than its composition, largely in the Johannine Epistles. But it is useless for historical Jesus study.
Yeah. Welcome back to MythVision. Derek Lambert, thank you for being a Patreon member. Dennis MacDonald, welcome back.
Thank you.
Look, I got a question from a Patreon member, Clifton M. Nichols. Thank you, Clifton, for supporting us and helping keep the lights on here. Here's your question. Dr. MacDonald, love your work on mimesis and have read 2 of your books. Some scholar recently said that the Gospel according to John was the most fictionalized of the 4 Gospels. Why does this Gospel have the most detailed description of the ministry of Jesus, especially relating to the part where John the Baptizer and Jesus were working together? This has always puzzled me that the latest Gospel had more details. Is the beloved disciple more fiction too?
The 4th Gospel is a fascinating document. But to understand it, I think one needs to understand its multiple dimensions. That is, it came out in 3 editions, perhaps more. You mentioned the beloved disciple at the end of your comment, but that only appears in the beloved disciple appears only in the last edition of the Gospel of John. And it's added on after the beloved disciple has died already. And the person who's editing it says, well, I know there are lots of other Gospels out there, but this is the one that we like, and actually claims that the beloved disciple wrote the Gospel. Well, we know that that wasn't the case. We have 2 earlier versions of the Gospel. The first one probably is a Dionysian Gospel, and that's where we find the changing water into wine, the wonderful prologue at the beginning of the Gospel of John that is similar to the monologue of Dionysus at the beginning of Euripides' Bacchae. We have the woman at the well, and of course, famously, eating my flesh and drinking my blood, you have life in you. The parts of the Gospel of John that people like Paul Anderson and others have argued for is that there are lots of teachings of Jesus that appear in the 2nd edition, and that which I call the anti-Jewish gospel. That's where no longer is the problem Pharisees and chief priests, as in the Synoptics, but it's the Jewish people generally.
Mm-hmm.
You're of their father of the devil, he was a liar from the beginning, and this is after the expulsion of Johannine Christians from Jewish synagogues, and it was a very bitter moment for them. It's referred to 3 times in the Gospel of John. Now, these sayings that appear over and over again in this 2nd edition have an amazing number of parallels with the Johannine Epistles, especially 1 John, but to some extent also 2nd and 3rd John. And it's likely that the person who put together the Gospel of John was responsible for also the Johannine Epistles and maybe the book of Revelation to make a Johannine corpus. And other people have argued for this, and I think it really makes a lot of sense. So the author then uses the content that you have in the teaching of John the Elder, who later is understood to be the beloved disciple. It's not the Apostle John. It's this Elder John, who's, by the way, known by Papias and was an informant to Papias. So the teachings of Jesus in the Gospel of John do have ancient pedigree. That is, the Elder John had a series of churches, apparently in Western Asia Minor, and was considered to be an important teacher. And the teachings were recorded in these epistles. And the epistles then, looks like, informed the teaching of the elder, especially in polemics against Jews. So the Gospel of John is really an amazing document. And in order to tease out the various strata of the Gospel of John, one needs to have very scientific criteria. And if you think the criteria for mimesis criticism is complex, wait till you get to the criteria you need to parse out how these texts work. We have aporia, that is non sequiturs. And so you find or duplications, or repetitions, and so on. And this has been worked out by a number of Johannine scholars with care and with distinction, and I'm largely parasitic on those kinds of understandings. So the Gospel of John has information that is earlier than its composition, largely in the Johannine epistles. But it is useless for historical Jesus study.
Yeah.
It's useless for understanding what's going on in the author doesn't know anything about the Q document, for example. His orientation is primarily toward Matthew and the Johannine epistles. So it's not helpful historically, but it has more historical roots than we usually think, but in form of the Johannine tradition.
So would it be safe to say, when they ask, why does this gospel have the most detailed description of the ministry of Jesus, especially relating to the part where John the Baptizer and Jesus were working together, that may be just an elaboration of the earlier synoptic stuff?
That's a good
So there is more, it is more if likely fictional, because it's elaborating further. It's not reaching back to some earlier, more primitive gospel.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for the super chat. Thanks for being the Patreon member and asking your questions. Dennis, I really appreciate it. And again, I would recommend, if anyone wants to see you elaborate that more in depth in writing, the Dionysian Gospel, toward the beginning of that, you actually parse out the three, you explain a bit of this before you even get into showing Dionysus material throughout the Gospel of John, which is a fascinating book I recommend everybody get. But also you have conversation in your latest, greatest, The Feuding Gospels, where these authors are having this engagement, and they should be paying attention.
That's right, yeah.
Get the book. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you.